Hey guys, in this video we're going to be talking about the Eachine Aurora 68, and this is a miniaturized version of the Aurora 90 that you saw on my channel a few weeks ago. And for the most part I actually like flying this one. This flies pretty well with a couple of notable exceptions. I'll discuss those in a moment. First of all, let me just go over the parts that are in this and what it looks like. It's, as you can see, it's shrunk down 68 millimeters motor to motor. The flight controller and ESC is still a 20 by 20, but it's been rotated 45 degrees to allow this more shrunk down configuration. The flight controller, the ESCs are the same 10 amp ESCs that are in the Aurora 90. The flight controller is also an Omnibus F3 miniaturized 20 by 20 flight controller. However, it doesn't have a micro USB port on there. It's got this smaller micro connector here on the side here. It's a little bit hard to see right there. And because it doesn't use a regular micro USB connector, you have to use these adapters that come with it. It's little 4-pin adapters to plug it in to configure it and flash it. And this is what the adapter looks like. It comes with one of these with a little micro USB connector on one end, and they also include an actual USB cable as well without an adapter, so I can plug it directly into the computer, so you can use either one. However, if you want to do any configuration to the flight controller or flashing, you do need to have those adapters because it doesn't have a USB port on there. The other thing that's also different is it uses a new micro receiver that's right there. And it's actually a spare part, and I'll show you what it looks like. So this is what the receiver looks like inside there. It's about the same size as the FlySky FS-A8S receiver. It's maybe a little bit lighter because it doesn't have a micro FL connector here for the antenna. It's just directly soldered on antenna, bind button, and also a looks like a 3-pin connector soldered onto the board. But that's the one that's inside there, and that receiver lets the stack be a lot shorter than the one that's in the Aurora 90. You can see there's right there, and then the antenna sticking out this side. In my flights, I didn't have any fail-safe issues. I did fly, well, not too far away, but it didn't seem like range was an issue in terms of connectivity, at least where I was flying. Now, one of the issues that I had was vibration in the video, and I resolved that by putting this rubber band around the lens and wrapping it around the back like that, around the video transmitter, because it's just stuck on with double-sided foam tape like in the Aurora 90. So I'm using this rubber band to go all the way around to basically keep the video transmitter firmly mounted to this red standoff here that holds it in place, and that seemed to get rid of the vibration issues. The props aren't very good. These are the Racer Star ones. These are the 1535s, I believe. And even I did crash this a few times, and even though they got these prop guards here, I still managed to have some props break on me, or actually not break, but bend. And you can see here's one of them. It bent right there, and then these Racer Star props are very prone to bending at the hub right there. You can see there's a white stress mark on this one here, and you can, they do bend, and then you can bend them back, but after a few times they'll just snap off, and they're not that well balanced, so they cause vibration in the flight footage. And I think, let's see, I think on one of these on here just has a little bit of a stress mark right there. It's really hard to see in the video, but it's on that prop there. And even with the prop guards, when you hit stuff, it seems like the props still get little nicks and stuff on them. So I'm hoping that maybe a better prop comes out for this. I may try and cut down some of those Gem Van 2035s because those seem to be better balanced than these. But as long as you securely mount the camera, the vibrations do go away. The other issue that I want to note is that this little plastic part right here is on, I think it's molded plastic, it's not 3D printed. There's a screw that goes in here and a screw that goes in here. And one of the crashes I don't remember which one it was, but one of these screws popped off, and I had to screw it back in, and it seemed to hold up in the other crashes. I don't think that the part itself is going to snap on a crash, but I think that the metal screw going into the plastic part here is going to strip eventually from all the crashes, because depending on how hard you hit, these things do tend to warp and stuff. So also, like the Aurora 90, it's got the same all-in-one video transmitter and camera that has the video in and video out for the OSD, and that plugs into the back right there. And that flight controller has the same OSD in it and the same firmware, the Omnibus F3. It does come with Betaflight 3.1 out of the box. But I flashed this with Betaflight 3.1.7. I updated that, and I will actually show you my Betaflight setup in a little bit here in the video. The motors that come on here are the Eachine 1102. These are the 11,500 kV motors, are smaller than the ones on the Aurora 90, and a faster kV, and you're going to need that for the smaller 1.5 inch props. Basically, the smaller the prop, you're going to need a higher kV motor to spin the props faster with the same battery. Also, like the Aurora 90, it does come with an LED bar in the back here. I don't believe I bothered to configure that in my when I reflashed it to 3.1.7 in Betaflight. I just left it. I think I actually just turned it off because I just didn't want the power draw. So the battery that they're including in this is this 2S 400 milliamp hour 30C battery. It is about 22 grams in weight. And when I was flying this with the stock battery, if you do any sort of punch out above 50% throttle, the buzzer that's on board will start beeping at you. And I lowered the minimum voltage to 3.2 volts, I believe, and even with this battery, the voltage would still sag below 3.2 volts and cause the buzzer to sound. So I actually started flying it with the Nanotech. This is the one I usually fly with on my micros. It's a 300 milliamp hour 35 to 70C 2S battery, and this one didn't have the same voltage sag that the stock battery has. I think this one is, yeah. This is 400 milliamps, and this weighs 22 grams. This is 300 milliamps, and this one weighs about 16 grams. This didn't have as much of a voltage sag than the bigger battery, and usually it's the other way around. The bigger batteries will not have as much of a voltage sag. When I think it has something to do with the overall C rating. The 30C rating is pretty low, even though this is a little bit higher, 35 to 70C on the burst. But this one didn't have as much of an issue with the voltage sag, so something you should keep in mind in terms of batteries you might want to use. I would say go with something like this. It's lighter, and you want a higher C rated battery so you can get lower voltage sag when you're flying around. So here's a quick comparison to one of my recent builds. This one on the left here is the Tomaquad's Tiny Swift, and you can see that from the prop guard perspective, it's pretty similar in size. And here's the profile from the side. The overall build, the stack on the 20 Swift is a little bit higher. I think that if you wanted to modify the Aurora 60, you could probably get rid of these extra hoops here and maybe desolder this antenna and put a little linear antenna here, maybe pointing straight back, and then you'll have a lower profile on this build. Something you could possibly do. I might do that mod later in another video. But in terms of flyability, because the Tiny Swift is built for the Femto and that has the 9250 gyro on there, the tuning on this was really difficult, and you have to have basically perfect motors, perfect props, so you don't have any vibrations. It's not the case with the Aurora 68. The flight controller on there has the 6000 gyro. It's not as sensitive, and I didn't really have to do a whole lot of tuning, and it still flew fairly well out of the box. It is still sensitive to props being unbalanced, and so still you got to have some better props and all. But in terms of which one, if you want to like build something out of the yourself, go with the Tiny Swift. But for me, my thinking these days is I would prefer to just buy something rather than build. This is not an easy build for one thing. And the other thing is that on the 68, even if even though you buy it and maybe you don't like the way it flies, you can always use these parts on something else later. So maybe even taking these parts out of the 68 and putting them into the tiny Swift frame, for example, if you don't want to do any building. That's another thing about a lot of these. All ready to fly, even though like the Aurora 90 or the Aurora 100, you can take those parts, put them into a different frame, and not have to do as much work in terms of building. And so I think that's kind of where I'm kind of going with a lot of these. I prefer to not do as many builds and just buy something and then fly it. And if I want to put it to a better frame later, I can always do that. So that's something to consider. Okay, let's get an overall weight measurement here. This is without the battery, and this one comes in at about 51 grams. And you can compare that to the Tiny Swift here. The Tiny Swift is lighter at 44.9, 45 grams. So obviously you can build something lighter, but obviously at the cost of your time. Now, keep in mind that I think that if you put on the 11,500 kV motors on here, those probably way more as well, so it would probably be similar in weight to the Aurora 68. I haven't done that mod yet. I'm thinking I probably will swap these motors out at some point, and we'll see what that weight looks like, so maybe that'll be a future video. Okay, so I'm going to quickly cover my Betaflight setup. I've already flashed this to 3.1 to 7. This is what I flew with. There you can see here's Betaflight version 3.1 and 7, and the board is the Omnibus F3. Here's what my port setup looks like. I've got the UART1 set up for MSP for the OSD, and UART3 is set up for the serial receiver. Under config, I have it under DShot 600. That's what you should be setting it at. For the ESCs, that's the ESCs come DShot 600 enabled out of the box. You don't have to do anything. Make sure you put in your yaw degrees to 45 to make sure that the board's rotated correctly. The receiver, mine's a FlySky receiver, so yours might be a little bit different, but you should select serial based for your receiver, and for me I selected iBus. If you're a FreeSky, you're probably going to select SBus. This is my VBAT setting, and I have the warning set to 3.2. If you have a stock battery, you probably want to lower that to 3.0 or maybe 2.8. The minimum cell voltage, I set that to 2.8. And I have the gyro and PID loop at 8 and 2 currently, although I think I will probably just go with 4 and 2. Probably going to change that in a future video. But it seemed to fly fine with 8 and 2. I have air mode on, and obviously you have to enable the OSD for your Betaflight OSD board. This is how I set up failsafe. This is how I set up all my boards on failsafe, so nothing different here. These are my PIDs, and these are pretty much stock Betaflight 3.1.7. I don't think I changed anything. I bumped my rate up to 0.75 for the roll, but it flies just fine on the stock PIDs. I think I might do a little bit of tuning, maybe lower the D some more and increase the P possibly. But this seemed to fly just fine otherwise. This is my receiver setup, nothing unusual there. This is how I set up my modes. I'm flying with arming on mode on auxiliary 1, and I've switched for acro and angle on auxiliary 2. Let's see here. Do I have anything for nothing in adjustments? I don't need to do anything here for in-flight adjustments because I can just go into the OSD to change my PIDs. And this is how I set up my OSD. I have basically flight time here, the voltage, and the current draw, and that's it. So I like to keep it nice and simple. Something you should note that on the camera, it comes, I think, with PAL enabled out of the box, and if you use auto and PAL, some of these things might not show up on the screen. So I switched my camera to NTSC, and then I actually defaulted it to NTSC in the OSD to make sure that the elements on the screen are actually in the proper locations. And I believe that's everything. I'll put it also a CLI dump in the description if you guys want my CLI dump. I know some people ask for that, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll put some line of sight footage here next, and also the FPV footage as well. So there's a fair amount of wind here today at the place that I'm flying at, and while this is a brushless micro, it is affected by the wind because it's so light. However, power was not a problem, and I was able to maneuver my way through the wind without too many issues. Something you guys keep in mind that if you think that this is not going to be affected by wind because it's brushless, it's not the case. It's affected by the wind because it's so light.
I like the VTX protector.